Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Monday of Lunch and Learn for Talent Search and EOC, the only time of the day during the workday, during our lunch break, where we can talk about anything and everything and anything related to the Talent Search and EOC competition. So thanks for joining us. As usual, we have the Q&A open. Let us know, y'all, where y'all coming from. I want to test out the chat. I don't know if you've already tested out the chat, Donna. I have with me Donna and Leah are joining us, and also Dr. Teresa Thompson-Pickney is here as well to answer any and all questions, and also for Leah and Donna, keep you updated in the chat and the Q&A. I don't see any chat. Maybe I'm missing it. I just want to make sure it's working. Usually we have folks chiming in.
I posted something. It should be open, ready to go.
Yes, and then Q&A, please put Q&A and we'll be answering that as we can. I don't see. How about give me a thumbs up if you can hear me out there, okay? Okay, yeah, we have a few folks chiming in. Thank you. Just making sure we're not, out here on our own, so to speak. Y'all are being real quiet this morning. Must be the weather. Usually we're a little bit more rowdy. Okay, there. Thank you. Okay. Glad I could hear you. You should see on your screen right now. Excuse me. Of course, right when I start webinar, start getting my throat dry. Our free webinar page listed on our NEC shop, right, Donna? We see that? Okay. I had a bad experience last week not being able to share what I was talking about. My worst nightmare, y'all. So let me know if I'm not sharing. I'm talking about something that you can't see, but you should see a listing of our free webinars. This week, we're excited to present the Unpacking the Talent Search APR free webinar. I don't know, Donna or Lee, if you could see if Lourdes is out there in the crowd joining us yet, but she will be presenting our APR for Talent Search free webinar. I strongly recommend, even if you've done a million of them, I'm sitting through it because every time I go through it, I pick up a different angle or a different way that I can make the process more efficient. If you can't make it, go ahead and register anyway, and you will get the link via a Zoom follow-up email. Also, we'll post it on our blog, and also it'll be posted on our YouTube channel with all the other free webinars we've been doing, and we keep a record of them there. Okay, so just wanted to let you know about that. Also, we just touch upon the surface here, scratch the surface, so to speak, when we're talking about our Lunch and Learns, which is a free service, but you really want to invest. It takes money to make money, that's for sure. To get money, you want to really consider investing in our EOC and Talent Search proposal writing workshops. We have them set up on an online course so that you can take them at your on your pace, on your schedule. So if you have to work on this, which I know you'll have to work on this after hours, weekends, evenings, you can at your own pace, at your own schedule, look at every single section, and then additional resources are available to you with the online course, which is not free. And those costs are proposal costs. So you will need to use indirect funds or non-federal funds or institutional funds to pay for those. Sounds like a no-brainer, but I have to keep reminding folks, okay? Also, your time and effort spent watching these videos, doing the research for data collection. I just got a really good question the other day about that. What about data collection? The regulation NOMB clearly states that research related to proposal writing or a research related to the gathering of data for federal funding is also an unallowable cost. So your time and effort has to be charged to something else rather than the grant. Okay, you cannot get federal funding while you're getting federally funded in your position. Okay, just want to make that crystal clear. That's why we're meeting at during our lunch hour, or maybe if it's not your lunch hour, then you take your lunch a little earlier with us or a little later so that this doesn't infringe upon that. Okay. We also do have, as usual, our other, the difference is proposal, non-allowable, okay? But professional development is allowable. So here's some courses as well set up with our Wix online courses. Great onboarding, great for somebody coming on board, or if you want to, as a veteran seasoned director, go through and double check some things. We also have, if you're not sure about this Wix online course, you can sign up to take our free 90-minute session on the umbrella regulations impacting all TRIO programs. If you want to test it out, if you like it, then you can see this is pretty much how we've set up our professional development courses along with our proposal writing courses, okay? So keep that in mind. We also are, in the middle of the Talent Search and EOC also, and all the programs, it's at that time of year, APR. So we are also able to provide technical assistance with the APR. What we do is we work with you. We don't, do your APR for you. There's no way we can do that. This is a collaboration, so to speak. We can guide you from the very beginning if you're totally new or if your stuff's all over the place. We can get you from that, and we can help and work with you every step of the way to get your APR submitted on time. All right. So we do have, very fortunate to be working with Mary Meeks regarding the Veterans Upward Bound APR, because that is very technical. I can't handle that one. I try and I can get so far, but the last couple of fields there really throw me for a loop. So we are fortunate to have Mary Meeks working with us with that. She's a seasoned, and those of you who have interacted with Veterans Upward Bound projects probably know her name. And also we are able to have a team of folks here that can help with all the other APRs as well. Okay. And if you get a chance, check out other services and products listed here. The majority of them are allowable costs. The only thing that's not allowable are anything related to a proposal development. Okay. So I don't know if we have any questions, and thank you, Donna. She's been putting a bunch of stuff in the chat for you. Let's see. I don't think we have any questions so far, correct? No, we don't have anything so far. So what I'm going to do now is see if I can shift over to talk about what I wanted to do is look briefly at the 2021 program applications, or what we call the RFPs for both Talent Search and EOC. And those are in the Google Drive for the Lunch and Learn. So y'all should have the Google Drive, and what I should be pulling up here. Let me know, Teresa, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see the Google Drive? Am I sharing that right now? Okay, great. All right, so this is the one for EOC. There's also one for a Talent Search when you go back a screen, I guess, or the page. And so it's called, it looks like this, the package instructions here. Okay, so I'm going to bring that up here in a second and look at that and go through just the first couple of pages. I think, to me, I dread looking at these instructions, Teresa. I do. Even after all these years, when I see it, I know I have to have it, but I dread it. And after all these years, Teresa, I still force myself to read every single page, even if it's just 5 pages a day of the old one, or when the new one comes out, I can look at it and kind of scan it and say, okay, everything's the same right there. But it's one of those things that I feel like it's almost bad. It's bad luck if I don't look at it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Same way for all these years.
Yes. Yes.
It's like a ritual. So I have to force myself to do it. So, but it's not fun reading, right? It's not, fun reading. Sometimes I start getting anxious while I read it. Okay. And after all these years, if I'm getting anxious, I can only imagine, not that I'm telling you to be afraid of it, but it's okay to be, don't avoid it. Okay. Don't avoid it. Look at the old 2021 program application for both Talent Search and EOC. I mean, if you're Talent Search, just look at Talent Search, and if you're EOC, just look at EOC. And promise me you at least will, maybe even through this session, we can go through some of the initial pages just to get ready. If you absorb it or review it bit by bit, when the real one comes out, I don't know when it's going to come out, there should be a lot of familiarity. Like we tell our students, the pre-college students and the older students, get familiar with the format of the test. I believe that's 50% of the battle is getting familiar with it. And the more you kind of expose yourself to it, the less stressful it should be. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at right now. And I'm going to see if I can find it down here. Thought I've had it and it's kind of closing up on me, but I'm going to open it up here. I think if I click here, it'll open it up. All right. You see that, Teresa? Do you see the?
Yes. Yes.
We're on a roll. Yay. Okay. So it came, this is the, they call it application for grants. We call it the RFP. It's for 2021. And it's a pretty good, I think it's got 99% of the answers. Unfortunately, sometimes it contradicts itself. So we spent a lot of time talking about what do we think they meant and try to get clarification. But just FYI, we want to, before we spend and shift over spending the majority of our time in the applicant and community support section for both EOC and Talent Search, the first couple of pages are about the competition highlights. And they keep telling you to register early on grants.gov. And there could include registration on SAM, which is sam.gov. So there've been a lot of turnover since we last applied. I mean, some of y'all may be at institutions where the same people are there, not a problem. A lot of us had a lot of turnover, even in other departments. Maybe it's a small college where, the director and their immediate supervisor did the uploading, or maybe it's a big college where you have a department and full-time people that do grant management, full-time. Either way, you want to make sure the right person has the credentials to log on, and that it's not done at the last minute. I have a feeling, Teresa, I don't know if you have any other, I think we talked about this before, that this will be a very short turnaround when it comes out. I don't know if you want to speak to that briefly.
Yeah, I definitely would not be surprised. Like I said, over the summer, we had quite a few RFPs that were released by the Department of Ed that had a 30-day turnaround. Um, I think that if you think about the government being shut down now, that is definitely going to have a potential impact on it could potentially have an impact on the amount of time that we get to actually respond to the notice inviting applicants.
Right. And so the last thing you want to do is also trying to put together and figure out, does the right person at our institution even have access to grants.gov?
Yeah, that's critical. Because if the person is gone and it has not been updated with the Department of Ed, then you may miss the information that comes out. And then as well, the person who was submitting, if they're not there, then that's a whole nother issue
Mhm.
that could potentially have a whole nother ramifications with your submission.
And if they have less people working in the department when they come back online, so double check the right people have, I know right now I went on to grants.gov, and of course, I don't think they're accepting anything right now, but you can poke around there, and I encourage you guys to go there. If some of these links are not working, if you go to grants.gov, they do have, something called like the lifespan of the grant cycle. I don't know if you can see this now, this website I clicked over,
Yes.
and you can see some good information still available, which I found very helpful. So if you all, maybe it's been 5 years since you did this, or maybe you do this all the time, great. But we do this all the time in a sense that, well, let me step back. We don't submit, Teresa. I have not submitted in a long time because I write the stuff and I only write part of the package. The grant application, as y'all, maybe I'm reminding you, is not just the narrative that we talk about every Monday. It's additional forms, and it's a whole package. And that package, needs to go through grants.gov, and it's, there's a workspace overview. And so once you find out who can actually submit and get into the grants.gov, they create a workspace, I'm told, from some of my clients. And then it's kind of like a shared Teams or
Mhm.
Google Drive, right, within the institution, where directors can upload documents for review by somebody there, and it's where you can continue to work on it. So the workspace is very, very important. Teresa, I don't know if you've been involved lately on that end. I have not.
Yeah, so when I wrote, not this student support services, the last time I wrote SSS for my institution was the last competition, and that was the last grant that I submitted. No, I submitted Upper Bound. The last time I worked in this space was Upper Bound. And it was new for us, meaning that it was an opportunity for us to share the workspace, but ultimately you want to make sure you're clear about what the process is at your institution, because when we did Upper Bound, we were expected to upload everything and everything was just going to be reviewed. The drafts and all that went through a different system. And then by the time we got to the workspace, it was all on us at that point. At some point, historically, it was up to the institutional research, I mean, research sponsored research office to do everything in grants.gov. But once they create the workspace, at some point I became more accountable for what was actually in the system. I felt okay about that, but it does have a different level of accountability when you're ultimately responsible for what's in there, and then they just go back and double check behind me that everything is there versus necessarily what I wrote.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, and it's just something you want to get familiar with, or at least know about.
mhm,
Okay, know about. A lot of us on this call do not have access to create the workspace.
correct.
It needs someone at your institution, that someone we spoke about, someone has the key to get this started, so we can start working on this. And of course, Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you could even start the workspace until the notice comes out, correct? You can't do it ahead of time, I don't think.
I'm not sure. Probably not because there would be nothing to attach it to from the federal perspective.
Right. So just be aware of it. And also, and I'd asked Donna about this earlier, I found some YouTube videos because I reading, but I like to also see someone take me through it, kind of like spoon feed me. And we're trying to figure out on our NEC YouTube page or channel how to include links to these videos that are short and sweet on how the workflow works, how to create a workspace, even though y'all may not be able to be the ones to create it, but also how to complete forms in a workplace. And one of the forms is the narrative. And again, it may be a situation where you all, from your grants and contracts office, they say, Lisa, we need the narrative, give us the narrative. Okay. But just to let you know how that works and what they do with it, and converting it, and after they review it and convert it to PDF, where they would upload that. Some of y'all might be in a situation because maybe it's short staff now, where you'll play more of a role in that. Okay, so just how to add participants to a workspace, or maybe you have somebody new, Teresa. A lot of people have told me we have brand new people that have never done it before, and it's a lot of little instructions, but sometimes you need a little bit of a visual, like I do lately. I'm like, I heard you, but you got to show me. And
Yeah.
so adding roles, user roles and workspace actions. And also maybe if you just want to brush up on grants.gov tutorial, just in case. Okay. So anyway, that information is there. If you take it a little bit at a time when stuff is still, pending, a lot less than anxiety than if, it's on, the race is on. You're like, I have time to learn all this. Well, the race is not on just yet officially. I think unofficially we should be everyone getting their budgets, for 26, 27 in Excel, anticipating what they have to pay folks, anticipating what fringe would be, getting your budget together, which is something else I wanted to bring up here, shifting back to now the RFP. And you should see that, right? Okay, RFP. Do y'all see
Yes.
that? Okay, great. So again, information about grants.gov, very important stuff just to read over, and then it tells you about the application process, about submissions. There is an option if you're going to do something by mail, but I wouldn't recommend it. Anyway, going through this for both EOC and Talent Search. I'm in the Talent Search EOC one right now. I want to shift down here to our next important thing. Well, everything's important in here, but regarding the budget, and of course, glance over the CPPs, the old ones, they're going to be different ones. We don't know for sure what they are. We'll have another workshop when we do that. But when you get down to page 22 in EOC about the budget, people have been asking, how much can I ask for? And the language here, sometimes is like, huh? And again, this is the old one, but basically it translates to, if you are not currently serving, and this might be a little bit different, Teresa. I can't remember what the new ones were actually funded at, but you could always use this as your base. If anything, it might be higher if you're brand new. Base your first year budget for 26, 27 on that, and for at least 150 participants. I'm sorry, 850 participants, 850. Now if you're existing, now this language is kind of confusing here, but the way I read it, Teresa, the way it translates to now, and correct me if I'm wrong, whatever you are getting for 25, 26 for EOC if you're existing, which you would be if you're, out there right now, 25, 26, whatever you should be receiving for 25, 26 is what you should, and the number that you have to serve is what you should ask for in the first year of your proposal budget for 26, 27. Okay, is that the way you understand it, Teresa?
Yes, and specifically because sometimes the new GAN hasn't come out, and it's around the same time that the RFP comes out. In any instance, it's the most recently available GAN that you have. And like I said, sometimes there's a linger where you may get it the next week or so, but start with your recent GAN.
And that's something that I always start with the budget first. So if you still haven't started, start with the budget. And it's time, in a way, it's timely because some of us are still, working on getting approval for a budget for 25, 26. You can save as and call it 26, 27 proposal budget, but ignore any carryover. You're just going by the base award amount, the base award that you should be receiving for 25, 26, minus any carryover you may be asking for. And this is the same for EOC and Talent Search. Now, there is an option here. I imagine, I assume it's going to be offered in the updated program application. Teresa, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but if somebody wants to reduce, and there's some people that have been talking to me about reducing their numbers. It says you can reduce your numbers. I don't recommend it. I think that might, I don't know, maybe it's just me speculating. They're not supposed to penalize you for that. But if you go down in your numbers, you go down in your budget.
Yeah. And I'll add that the consequence of that is you want to be very clear about whether or not you're going to lose a position because, our grants, our TRIO grants are very high. The percentage of the budget is very high for staff, personnel as well as benefits. And so when you reduce the number of participants, you may potentially be reducing a full-time staff person as well. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've experienced. We did do it one time in my year career, we did it one time with EOC because the numbers were just outrageous, and so we did lose a full-time permanent position because of that, and we had to prepare for that because that can be very, yeah, it was very stressful once that decision was made and they began to implement, but they made do because they had less people to try to recruit.
Right. So again, and you can't, and some people say, well, I want to ask for more money. And that's the thing, you can't ask for more money, even if you want to serve. So more participants. And I've had that conversation with folks. So wait a minute. So let me get this straight. I can reduce my numbers, but I have to reduce my budget. Yes, you can. That's an option that you can do. But if I wanted to increase my numbers and ask for more money, I can't. I said, correct. And you can't even ask for more students on the same money because then you'll be watering down the cost per participant that they're trying to maintain. So whatever you have right now, meaning dollars that you have, your budget for 25, 26, and the number that you're supposed to serve, you're basically stuck with that. Okay, unless there's different instructions that come out in the updated program application. So things to think about. So right now, everyone should be drafting their budget for the first year of the proposal. And like Teresa said, even if you don't reduce your numbers and reduce your budget, some of us, Teresa, are having to reduce personnel because it's gone up and mileage has gone up and insurance has gone up and will go up. And some of that has forced us to eliminate positions like administrative assistance positions, and sometimes even service providers, or our tutoring is like, okay, is it going to be less expensive for us to, I can't have both live tutoring and online tutoring. What's going to go? I can't do both. I do want to make sure for Talent Search that we have something in my budget that ties into high quality tutoring or access to high quality tutoring, which is a required service, because sometimes you have to be very careful if you don't have any tutoring money in your budget. to show how you're working with, and I think Teresa, you did this very well with your after school 21st century, tutoring programs, to show the collaboration, that it's a very tight referral process to refer your students to receive tutoring from the school or from another federally funded program, which is fine. But the description, or how does it come across as high quality? I'm not saying it's high quality just because you pay for it, but there's a little something to be said about it coming out of your budget, ensuring that it's going to get done. And that's what I fear, Teresa, sometimes with a referral to tutoring, that I have to be very, I feel like I have to explain it a little bit more. I have to feel like I have to defend it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I was actually reading the Q&A. There is a question in there, just FYI.
Yeah,
I definitely agree that you want to be conscious about. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
that's fine. And I'll ask you, since you were reading that question, and that's from, if you want to go ahead and answer that question, and regarding quality of personnel, and then we'll shift back to applicant and
Okay.
community. Okay.
Okay. So the question is, Lisa, in the past with my quality of personnel section, I've included statements like preferences given to individuals who have succeeded in overcoming the disadvantages of circumstances like those of the target population. I do this to answer the prompt in the application, but I'm worried this is a trigger phrase, which is what do you advise? Um, so um, so basically, it could be a trigger word. I think first of all, we're going to have to understand whether or not that is a continued question that is actually asked in the future. But ultimately, the bigger element is making sure that you respond in your response, that you're focused on the fact that you will be hiring people who have the qualifications to do the job. That is the biggest element of it, and ensuring that your hiring process is unbiased. You really want to focus on that primarily. And then if that question is there where it speaks to it's the plan to employ personnel who have succeeded in overcoming barriers like those of the target population, that is pretty much what the statement is that we put in our last grant proposals, the last grant cycle. And so, again, just ensuring that, it's okay to include language, but the language needs to be clear that you're going to actually encourage applicants from individuals who have personal or professional experience overcoming barriers to post-secondary education, without implying any preference based on race, ethnicity, or other protected categories. So that is the primary emphasis that you're focused on, is qualified individuals, and taking into consideration those who've had the experiences of the participants that you're serving.
I agree with that, Teresa. So to answer your question, I would not repeat that same sentence like we've always repeated that same sentence since we've been in trio. I would take that sentence, I would try to find a different word for preference, and I definitely, like Teresa said, overcoming I wouldn't even say disadvantages at this point, overcoming the barriers, or I don't even sure about that, of college. The wording you said those folks that are non-college, or first generation college students, I think you mentioned,
You can do that. Yep.
who've succeeded in overcoming the barriers faced by talent search or EOC eligible participants, in that manner. But then I would also take the sentence that you have, Beverly, the way you have it. I would send it through ChatGPT and upload those documents that are in our Google Drive, about the Gear Up trigger words, also the talent search, or the words, the document that we have that and it has a list of trigger words. Upload those documents and have ChatGPT help you finesse that sentence so that it does not ask it to not include or lead to any of the trigger words or statements on the other two documents. Okay, that's what I would do also to get a sentence that would be appropriate. And we'll talk about that more in detail, in our, you're welcome, in our, we do go into a lot more detail. Remember, Teresa, we have slides on what words you could use instead, and basically focusing on the person's professional and personal experiences and abilities in those same issues and situations that would be faced by Talent Search or EOC eligible participants or students. Okay, keep it that way. Okay. And again, we'll wait to see how they're going to rephrase that. It's in the regulations, Teresa, the question itself, the preferences. Well, we'll take a look at it one of these days. Maybe next week we'll focus on that and talk about the wording and see if it's actually the wording is there, or have we put it there as a response? Does the word preference, and I don't know if you want to look ahead, Teresa, to see if the word preference is actually stated in anywhere in the RFP or the program applications for both Talent Search and EOC. Okay.
Okay.
And we were talking about the Talent Search, when you refer tutoring, when you don't have any money in your budget for tutoring, and when you want to make sure you let the readers know that not a problem, we are going to offer the required service of access or connections to high quality tutoring. And it will be through X, Y, and Z. And I always feel a need to defend it more rather than just say we're referring to the target school. Well, we just talked about how the target schools are lagging in the academic support. So sometimes I feel bad saying that the students are going to be referred to the school's tutoring program. And I feel like I have to have another entity to help with that. And I don't know if you have any tips with that. I know you've been successful with collaborating with other federal programs, Teresa, and I think that's what we were speaking to. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was preparing for the next assignment. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Reading.
I was just
All right,
gonna.
I'm back.
All she was going to do is, she was going to say how she's worked with other federal programs to make sure. And in my experience with Boys and Girls Clubs, we had our educational directors and we had other resources and programming after school at the clubs, in addition to what the schools might be offering. I think this time around, Teresa, I don't know, maybe I know too much about the school's tutoring program, and in fact, in one of the areas for Talent Search, when they ask why is there a need with rigorous secondary scope program of study, if the schools like in Texas all have to offer it, then how come so few students are getting it? And we have to say, well, it's because there's a lack of tutoring at the target schools for this. So then why are you referring them to? So I could see where a reader could say, well, there's a lack here, but then you're talking about using their services. I'm not impressed. The applicant does not state a clear, or we don't think it's high quality. So make sure in your answer that you go ahead and talk about why it's high quality, even if it's not, even if it's not, if you want to act like it is.
I definitely agree, that regardless of what level of tutoring you're actually providing, because this is the plan. The plan is to provide the best, most quality tutoring that you can provide. And so just ensuring that you put a couple of buzzwords in around, student-centered tutoring, supporting them with their homework. So there are some baseline type areas of focus that you should do in any tutoring program. Just making sure that you put a few buzzwords in there related to that is helpful.
Exactly. Give me your definition of what high quality is. At least address it.
Yeah.
What I would take off points, Teresa, is that if they never mention the word high quality when they talk about tutoring, definitely if they didn't mention tutoring at all, even, and I'm not talking to direct tutoring, it says connections. Talk to me about what your definition is of connections, but then the word is high quality. And I know that's impossible to do ourselves for a lot of students. So I'm going to stress quality over quantity. And so maybe I say it's for a specific grade level, in a specific subject, or in just the rigorous secondary school program of study courses for a specific grade level. Make it realistic. Nowhere does it say you have to provide high quality tutoring to everybody. And in fact, it could backfire if you say that. I could say that doesn't look reasonable. They don't have a budget to support that, or they only have 2 tutors, or they only have so much in online tutoring. How can they say that? So you don't want to go overboard. So I really feel for that. Anytime I see the word high quality, that means low quantity.
Mhm,
All
mhm.
right, so just keep that in mind. So in the EOC program application, the selection criteria starts on page 27 as to where you earn the points toward your proposal score. We're going to fast track and we're going to start at page 29, talking about applicant and community support. For EOC first, we're at 16 points. The secretary evaluates the applicant and community support for the proposed project on the basis of the extent to which the applicant has made provisions for resources to supplement this grant and enhance the project services, okay? Including, and these are the items that they're wanting us to talk about. You get eight points for the first half of the question: facilities, equipment, supplies, personnel, and other resources committed by the applicant. All right, so to me, Teresa, that's like a paragraph for each, or
Yes.
maybe a table for each. I try to put in dollar value or amounts of units of items, and if I can, the estimated in-kind value. I know some institutions and some agencies don't want to do that for whatever reason. That's fine. That's not worth a fight. But focus on the meeting space, the number of meeting spaces. Focus on, you know, how big they are, where they're located. Under supplies, you know, what is there, how many units of a certain thing that they are donating to you. This is from your university or your agency of things they are giving to you all. Equipment, you know, depending on how your institution defines equipment. I know the federal definition just changed recently. I think if it's one item is worth $10,000 or more, one item, it becomes equipment, but your institution may still be with a $5,000 or more. So check in with that. And is there anything you have access to, even if it's limited access or just you're sharing access to something that would cost, if you were to buy it, one unit, more than $5,000 or more than $10,000, depending on your institution's definition. I mean, that might be something like the audio or the phone system, the email system, you know, those things might be a lot more than $5,000 or $10,000 to implement, and that you're getting a piece of that. It could be a portion of that that service that you have you get access to. Supplies, again, anything that you are given by the agency or the college. None of these items can come out of your budget. Okay, they can't be things that you purchase once upon a time out of grant funds. Personnel is a big table. I mean, think about all the departments on campus that are somehow involved in both your EOC and Talent Search program assisting that don't get anything out of the grant. They don't get a salary out of the grant. Even the director supervisor usually, you know, is a position that's already been on campus or at the agency, and they're going to be there. But they were there before the grant got funded. They're going to be there after the grant leaves. They are the lucky folks that get to supervise the program. So we usually call them the principal investigators, and their time and effort to overall provide overall supervision to the director in the program. That's their time and effort is considered a commitment. And all the other departments, you know, HR, of course, the president's office, you know, allowing the program to happen, allowing to give you an office, marketing, the institutional research, then IT, just so many departments, and you need to provide a bullet of the information or the resources that are providing free of charge, and any other resources committed by the applicant. Can't think of anything right now, except sometimes it used to be, and some people during our budget webinar popped up and said, oh, well, our college gives us our indirect. And I said, oh, that's great. That's becoming few and far between. So maybe you don't want to say they give you the indirect, but whatever the indirect would possibly be, sometimes it's about to $20,000 a year. You could say that's a donation from it, because it really is. Once they take the 8% of what you spend, then they should put it in another account and then treat it as a donation back to the project. So that I think would read better than by saying, oh, they give up their 8%. You know, they don't need to know that 8%, that the donation they give you is coming from the grant itself, but they could do that. And then that's worth 8 points. And then the second part is resources secured through written commitments from schools, community organizations, and other. And again, I want to point out that written commitments. So you want to make sure that you state that you have letters of commitment on file, not that they will be on file, because that's where I lost points. So Teresa, I don't know if you want to speak to any points or tips on either one of those two parts of the applicant and community support section for EOC.
Yeah, one of the good things about EOC are the sites that many EOCs have that are beyond the institution, the community sites and things of that sort. So you're able to really leverage a lot of commitments from those sites, but also all of the great things that you're actually getting as a result of being at their site where you're working with students, recruiting students or participants for your program. So that's definitely a strong point for EOC as well as talent search with the target schools. Also, going back to the equipment slash supplies, your portable devices, say you don't have a lot of money in your budget and you write in one computer or one laptop and a printer, then, perhaps that may be something that your institution is providing on an annual basis. I know we started to get where they started just including us in the purchase of those so that because our technology was so old a lot of times in Trio because we had about 5 years of a cycle and you're looking at about 3 years of life for most computers and so those are great assets and high value assets for your organization, I mean for your commitments. um, Community organizations, just keep in mind that there are so many opportunities to partner with community organizations to help you with recruitment of your participants and things of that sort. You do want to be conscious, and this came up, and I think we may have talked about this of including like your if you have I think a lot of institutions no longer have the diversity, equity, inclusion offices, but there were TRIO programs that were defunded because they had one, all the partners they had listed, they had that one partner listed, uh, and basically they lost their funding. They were defunded as a result of that. So just keep that in mind as well. I don't know that many still exist, but if you do, just be conscious of what you call them and potentially get permission to call it something else. And we've encouraged programs to do that and other grant opportunities outside of TRIO.
You are so right, Teresa, because some folks got canceled because their GEPA statement listed some of the departments on their campus that would be helping. And this was 2 or 3 years ago, with Upward Bound. They went back and read the GEPA statements that included that the diversity department on campus would help to promote the Upward Bound program. And that was all she wrote, literally. Nothing even in their proposal. So what you want to do, and thank you for bringing that up, in the first question, this goes for talent search as well. I just happen to be showing the EOC, but it's the same advice for talent search and EOC and any of the TRIO programs. When you talk about the other personnel and other departments on campus, make sure you pick wisely. There might be some departments still on your campus, which is fine for them, that you don't want to mention by name here. Okay, just letting you know. The same thing with your community resources. Unfortunately, some of them are, you may have to keep off the books, so to speak, which we thought in the past was a plus, now becomes a trigger, possibly a trigger word for cancellation in the future. So pick wisely. And again, I would rather you have just 3 or 4 community agencies listed with 2 or 3 bullets of what they're providing your EOC or talent search project, instead of having a lot with just 1 or 2 lines or the same thing, referral and space, referral and space, referral and space. So pick wisely. And again, we're talking about this section now because along with the needs section that takes the longest to collect data and research for, this one is second place that takes the longest to do. I mean, because everything else you can kind of control, in a way, but this involves, especially nowadays, looking at that list that we've always used before and really studying it and saying, okay, are these folks still around? Number one, so a lot of people are no longer there. And number 2, what is their purpose and what we were including them for before, is it something now we should not probably include them? And so that may mean getting some other community-based organizations involved if that was the majority of your list. And that takes some time. And of course, I'm an EOC reader, so I want to make sure you have written commitments from some GED programs, right? Is what I'm thinking. And so that takes some time. And I want to see written commitments from community organizations and others. It doesn't say or others, Teresa. It says and others. So I'm foreseeing possibly mention of maybe some collaboration with some other an EOC, some other post-secondary institutions or programs in addition to GED programs, which I consider the schools, or maybe alternative schools as well, and maybe even businesses or government, other government programs, other local, city and government programs. It says and others. And I would take a points away if I just saw GED programs and some community organizations, but there was nothing else mentioned. I could take a point off, right, Teresa, and say that there was no mention of any other resources from the community. And you wouldn't have anything to say if you just give me one entity, a business or even a, commerce, small business, or the department, what do they call it now? I can't think of the city, Rotary Club, I think of community-based organization as an organization that is set up to help directly, eligible participants and folks, direct services versus, we can have the Chamber of Commerce, maybe providing free training that your staff takes part of, or resources or scholarships, whatever. I really think, and that takes some time, and you want to make sure you have those, some sort of written commitment and at least, 2 to 3 bullets of something they are providing you with, not necessarily collaboration. Earlier, they talked about collaboration in the plan of operations. So some of the folks could have been mentioned briefly there, how you all work together. Okay, now it shifts over to being one-sided. What are you providing me with? That kind of thing, Teresa. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I agree with everything that you said. And someone did put in the question answer. They did mention the Chamber of Commerce. And then there's also another question: is there a given formula or percent that the institution should be committing? There's no formula for it. There's no magic formula. It's responding to the criteria that they've given and being as robust as you can in your response.
Right. Thank you for that question. Thanks for that answer. And one more thing I'll ask before I shift over to answer the other question that's talking about quality of personnel. When I was looking at somebody's budget in Excel, Teresa, a client's budget in Excel, and I got to supplies and I noticed there was no money for computers or printers. And I said, where's your computers and printers? I mean, this is the budget for a grant. How are you going to do all these things without? I see a database, but I don't see the staff computers or printers. And they're like, oh, well, we got that in the college gives it to us. And I said, well, okay, well, when I was looking at their applicant and community support section, there's no mention of it there. And they were like, oh yeah, we forgot. Don't forget. You want to make sure you mention it here and also mention it in the budget. I'm not going to remember. And it wasn't even listed there. So these two, the budget and this section, you should keep close together and make sure, if you don't need any computers or they're, paying for it, then state why, or at least put a line item, put 0, put an asterisk by it. And in the narrative say, what, as previously mentioned, the institution will be covering this cost, which is worth this amount every year. So don't forget to talk about that. And again, that goes for talent search as well. Okay. Don't forget, we get so used to it, we don't realize until someone on the outside looks, and you could lose a point right there. And you could say, well, I told you back. Even if you said, I told you back, that I'm not going to go back and remember. That's not my job to remember. So you have to remind me. Here's a great question. And, I think we need to do a session, like we are right now, talking through the questions for quality of personnel. We'll probably do that maybe next time. But will the Department of Ed support a project director with a bachelor's degree? And I'm guessing that means with no other, a bachelor's degree plus a master's degree. I guess just only a bachelor's degree. I would take a point away. Okay, I would take a point away. There's no regulation about it, but I just say I feel the person needs to have a master's degree. And that's all she wrote. You can't respond to that. I've lost points before for an EOC that did not require the director to have a master's degree. And I was thinking it's just EOC. We're not going for, right, getting students. We don't even have an objective that says students will graduate from college. We're just getting them into college. So surely it makes sense to say it's preferred but not required. And it's for a community-based agency in a rural area. I'm not going to be able to find somebody, with a master's degree to do the work for this. I was already spending the money, Teresa. I was already, I got this, but I won't be able to hire anybody. And I should have been thinking, get the darn thing funded and then worry about finding someone with a master's degree. And then, if you can't, ask the department, look, I tried, I can't find somebody. Can you allow me to make it preferred instead of required? And that's where I lost over $1 million because I didn't think that way. I should have made sure that I had it covered to get it funded and not lose a point so that I could try to get somebody and then deal with somebody within the department to, after the fact, post award, get that changed. But because I was thinking too far ahead of time and wasn't focused on that and thought the same way, well, there's no requirement, there's no regulation. Well, yeah. So if this is an existing program and if this is what it is right now and it's for a particular case or a particular person, it put preferred and just be prepared and just assume you're going to lose a point. Losing a point there is not the end of it, especially for an existing program, as long as you have enough prior experience points to offset that. Okay, so just be prepared. And hopefully you can come back later and tell me, hey, guess what? I didn't lose a point. I didn't lose a point because I put preferred, but not, and not required. And I hope you can come back and say that, but I'd rather play it safe. If it's definitely if you're trying to go for new funding, or some of us, Teresa, a lot of folks this time around have told me they've never met their numbers this whole 5 years. So they have no points going into it. So they're writing like they're brand new. So they cannot afford to lose that point right there. Okay. So, Department of Ed, I think, would support a project director with a bachelor's degree. So let me rephrase that. Post award, if you can show that you tried to, depending how it was written, if you're fortunate enough to get funded with a proposal that said preferred, not required bachelor's degree, and then they would support it. I'm talking about right now, would the readers allow it? So there's a difference between the Department of Ed supporting it after the fact versus what's being told to readers to look for in a very competitive competition. Okay. And the same folks that are approving for your for you to have a director that doesn't have a bachelor's degree, shift, forward or backward, or in time, are the same folks that are being told to tell the readers, if they don't say a master's degree is required, take a point off. Okay, Teresa, I don't know if you've had that's my personal experience with it. If you've experienced it or you heard from readers what they've been told to look and take off points for.
Yeah, that's been the same experience that I've had, Lisa. And, the bottom line is you want to demonstrate in your proposal that you're hiring the most qualified individuals. And I know that some people may debate whether a master's degree gives you a higher level of ability than a bachelor's degree, but that's not really what's at debate here. Just from a general standard, the higher the degree, allegedly, the better, or the more qualified. So therefore, just keeping that in mind that, the master's degree is a common practice when it comes to the directors in TRIO. And so you want to at least, be in alignment with the benchmarks that are out there in the common practice of the work that we do.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And we do have a couple of questions here. Teresa, do you see that question that we have for EOC? Should we stay away from those agents? Want to speak to that? I know what I would do.
Okay, so it says for EOC, should we stay away from mentioning agencies that obviously work with special populations, NAACP, Progreso, Latino, Southeast Asian Association. So from my perspective, as a grant writer in the climate that we are writing and that we are responding to proposals in, and the executive orders and all the information that we have received over the last, what is this? Woo, 10 months. Woo. Um, I would stay away from that, not because I don't believe in it, not because I am against it or that I'm hiding anything. But there was a specific question in the Gear Up grant that went deeper than that. It talked about diversity. We were supposed to talk about civil rights organizations or what have you. And when it came, and that grant was due the first week in February. And I went in and I took that out of my proposal. I had the NAACP and I had some other, and the grant was funded. So I will say the grant was funded. And I potentially would have lost points had I included it. So it was just not a risk that I was willing to take as a grant writer for my client. And therefore I took it out, because I felt like that was going to be best for, ensuring that they got funded.
I agree completely. I agree completely with everything you said. It's not that I don't believe in their cause. It's not that I won't continue to work with them, but I'm not going to put them in the proposal. And I would make sure I found agencies. And this is what's going to take time, right? They used to be your true blues, right? Just go right there and you could list them. If you have to take them out, who are you going to replace them with? So, think about other agencies, community-based organizations that deal with folks across the board, providing or assisting in services that would impact all of these individuals, not by a certain special population. Focus on the low income, and services to help those folks that want to get back into school or go to college. Okay, the focus on them. I've shifted over to the applicant and community support section of Talent Search, which is almost identical, except there is a slight difference to that. And we'll answer Cindy's question here in a second here. So again, worth 16 points. Everything, the first part of it's the same. About the facilities, equipment, supplies, personnel. There is a little something different for the second part I wanted to point out for Talent Search only. Talent Search. If you, the first part of the question, number 2, resources secured through written commitments from community partners, 8 points. But there's a little subpart to that. An applicant that is an institution of higher education, college, university, must include in its application commitments from the target schools and community agencies. All right. So anybody out there with a university, you must mention the target schools, the commitments you're getting from the target schools and from community organizations. They're not going to look as a reader. I ignore anything dealing with your commitments from other colleges and universities. You can't replace it. And I've had clients give me target school and a whole bunch with a college. And I'm like, where are your agencies? Oh, we didn't think about that. We thought it had to be other colleges. I said, no, it needs to be community organizations. The other thing is, for those of you out there at Talent Search that are agencies, Boys and Girls Clubs, we have several agency partners. You include, this part, the other part is if you're a target school, and I don't know if we have any, but an applicant that is a community organization must include its application commitments, the target schools and institutions of higher education. We have a couple of our clients that gave me another table of other community organizations, and we used to do that all the time in Boys and Girls Club. It's like, you work very well, and there's a place to put that. There's a place to talk about it in the plan of operation, where you talk about the way you collaborate with other agencies, Talent Search, in the question about overarching college strategy. How do you work with the target schools and other agencies? That's when you bring it up. But here in the applicant community support section for Talent Search, if you're an agency, you want to talk about how you're working with colleges and universities. And some of my clients will say, well, we have this great, we want to talk about it. And I said, you know what, if we have room, we'll add another table at the very end. But a reader will not give you points on how great you're working with the agency if we don't talk first about how you work well or collaborate, or I'm sorry, what resources or commitment you get from colleges and universities. Okay, that needs to be talked about first if you are a community-based organization to begin with applying. If you're a college or university, you want to stress that community, the way how community-based organizations are providing commitments to you all. Okay, so see the difference? And if you want it, if you're compelled to talk about the other, what they're not asking for, you could always include it, but you want to put at the end, but almost 90% of the time we have to take that out to make room for the narrative that will give you the points versus what makes you feel better to including it there. Teresa, I don't know if you want to speak to that. Sometimes we have to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, you answered it with the same that I would respond with.
We have a couple of questions regarding prior experience points, those that you earn at the second, third, and fourth year based on your performance on your APR. So that's why this APR right now that you're working on is very important. It's your last chance to get points. So yes, you take all your points for those years. If you did not meet our numbers for one of those years, then you don't, it depends on how far you met. If you're within 90%, you still 90 to 99% of your numbers, you're still in the running for the objectives if you've lost 3 points that you get for serving the right number of students. If you're below 90% for both Talent Search and EOC of the number that you were supposed to serve, then you don't get any points that year. So it's a 0, then whatever points, and the 3 years are added together, divided by 3. If you have letters of support for all target schools, as well as an MOU from the district and letters of support from several community agencies, that should cover us, correct? Well, again, those letters, they should, you just tell the reader in this section that you have letters of commitment and or MOUs on file right now in the project director's office. They don't go in with the application. Okay, they don't go in with the grant. Okay, they're not asking for it there, but they want you to make sure you have them on file. So you should be covered if you have them on file right now. Okay, before or by the time you submit the grant. So that's why you got to start working on them now. Right. So I think we've covered everything here. Thank you all so much. Sorry to keep you a little over time. And Teresa, we'll be starting our meeting here in just a second, right? Good news is that we're together, so we'll log off. So everyone, I hope you have a great weekend. Don't forget about our APR SSS. I'm sorry, our Talent Search APR webinar that's coming up this week. Okay. Thank you all so much. Have a great week.